welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Sarah's Chill, that company that we love that never stops making the lives of breastfeeding parents easier. We will hear more from them later. But for now, you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page. If you ever need anything, see if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're over there, you can scroll down, enter your email address, and we will send these episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are on Patreon, and it's so much fun. We're really getting to know people. We have people from all over the world who are sharing their parenting experiences in their countries and asking for advice or just venting. These are our Zoom calls. And then we have like extra ad-free episodes. We have our mini podcast where we talk about things related to breastfeeding or just parenting or things that we're seeing and going through. You can head to the link at the top of the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, and see if there's a tier. It goes by tiers that appeals to you. And we're still hosting that ongoing giveaway where you will get a goodie bag if you leave a review. So you can write a written review on iTunes or stars or wherever it is that you listen from. If you're able to leave reviews on that app, go ahead and do that. Screenshot it, send it to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll send you a goodie bag of podcast stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. And it's pretty fun. Dianne sends them out every week. I have some addresses for you today. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
I'm a first-time mom, and breastfeeding has started out with so much difficulty. This podcast has come to the rescue for so many issues that have come up, from oversupply to nipple shields and hunger cues. I highly recommend listening, and I'm so grateful for this resource as I go forward. I'm so sorry that breastfeeding started out difficult for you, but it sounds like you're on the right path, and that's awesome.
And you're not alone, because it starts out difficult for so many people because we just don't know.
That's very true.
We don't know anything about it.
And we're just like alone, right? Like sometimes we just don't have anybody. I know I really didn't have a lot of support, and I know Abby didn't have a lot of support either, and which is kind of how we ended up where we are. But it is really, really difficult. It's a difficult thing to do when things are going well. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But when things are not going well, it just makes it so much more hard. Oh my gosh. So I give you a lot of credit.
And not being isolated really sucks. And then the only person you really have to rely on for help is your doctor, your pediatrician. And they don't know stuff about breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I mean, they really can't. I mean, they can give you the basics of breastfeeding, but like if you have a problem, they're not going to be able to help very well, or they're going to give you some bad information, likely. And so then it's just rough.
And sometimes it's like the only thing you have is like Facebook groups or, and that can be really difficult too, because sometimes not the best information goes on around those groups as well. So I am really glad that you found your way, and I'm glad you found us so that we could kind of commiserate together, because we get you.
Yeah, totally.
We get it.
Been there.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Yeah, we totally get it. So thank you so much for sending that in for us. And like I said, I'm glad you're kind of it sounds like you're on the other side of it. So I'm really glad that you've kept it going, because it can be, it's a lot. Well, today we're going to talk about dysphoric milk ejection reflex, or D-MER. And we did an episode on this a long time ago. I don't even remember how long ago it was, but it was a while back. And thought maybe we would do it again because we just had somebody that emailed us about it.
We did. And I think the episode's old enough now where people just aren't scrolling back that far, because there's like 400 episodes and I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear it's from August 2019. That is a long time ago. So
it was 5 years ago.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That was like pre-pandemic, man.
Yeah. Anything pre-pandemic. Oh my God. Come on.
That was like, decades ago. Yeah. So we recently got an email from Ruby, and she talks about how, here, I'll just read it. I have had a rocky start to motherhood. I work for myself, and juggling big business and newborn has been a struggle. We also lost our house due to exorbitant rent increases and had to put a pet down. I thought it was the stress of all this that was causing nausea and a wave of doomsday feelings every time I breastfeed my baby. Turns out it could be dysphoric milk ejection reflex. I'd love to learn more about this and hear your takes. I also think other moms out there might benefit from learning about D-MER, and it is hard to find reliable information on this topic. And she's right. It's really hard to find information on this topic. And imagine like you have a baby and it's awesome, and every time you breastfeed your baby, you have a doomsday like feeling.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I've never heard it put quite like that before, but I like the way she said that, like a doomsday type of feeling.
Yeah.
The way they describe it on the website, because there is a website, dmer.org, it's causes like negative feelings, like dysphoria. That's why it's called dysphoric milk ejection reflex, because the dysphoria means just like you're not feel like just negative feelings, like she said, doomsday, right?
Yeah.
Like just negative feelings, and that's happening during milk letdown. It doesn't occur during the whole breastfeeding experience. Like you're not feeling it the whole time you're breastfeeding. You're just feeling it when the milk lets down, and that's it. And then it should pass, and you should be feeling a little bit more normal as the hormone. It's all hormone related. And as your hormones start to adjust with the breastfeeding, your prolactin and oxytocin, then things start to go back to normal again. But what causes it is dopamine. That's what they think causes it, is dopamine. So what happens is that the dopamine, oxytocin is supposed to and dopamine kind of impact each other. So what can happen is that oxytocin, when the oxytocin goes down, or when the oxytocin rises, dysphoric milk ejection goes down, or dopamine. I'm getting all confused. When oxytocin rises with your milk letdown,
knows what she's talking about. Give her a minute.
Yeah, dopamine drops, but for people that have D-MER, it drops very, very quickly, which causes that feeling of dysphoria. So it can be, it's not something that happens to everybody, and people mistake it for other things. Like how it sounds like Ruby is like, I'm not sure what's going on here. And that's what people kind of feel like. And I've heard people talk about it when they kind of say like, they might say something like, oh, breastfeeding just doesn't feel right. Or I get this feeling when because they don't really know what it's about.
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing to kind of explain and to even pinpoint like, okay, it happens with milk letdown. Because sometimes people don't feel their letdown.
Yeah. I was going to say, I wonder if people always associate the two.
Yeah. I don't know if people are associating it with milk letdown, but it can happen during milk letdown. I remember this. I had this too. And it's more prominent like in the beginning, and it should kind of start to resolve itself around 3-ish months. For some people, it can go all the way through your breastfeeding journey, but most of the time it kind of resolves itself at around the 3-month mark. But I remember feeling like this in the very beginning when I was breastfeeding. And I also thought it was situational because I was moving and I had a lot of postpartum and like all that stuff. But it really was, you just feel like, it's just a terrible kind of feeling to have.
Yeah. And it's also different from nursing aversion, which
very different from nursing aversion.
And a lot of people will, it's hard. It can be a little bit difficult to distinguish because there are some similarities. But with nursing aversion, it's the entire time. It's not related to the letdown or anything like that. It's just the feeling of the baby on your nipple. and the insane anxiety-driven desire to throw your baby across the room, which, of course, nobody does. But it's just like, oh my God, get the baby off. Please, I need them to unlatch. And when they unlatch, it's better. Also hormone related.
Hormone related, yes. So one thing, I have a question for you, because the website was also talking about what D-MER is not, and it mentions nursing aversion. And it says that this can happen to some mothers while pregnant or when nursing toddlers. So is it not, it doesn't happen with newborns, does it?
Well, I don't think it's as common.
Right.
It probably has happened, but it's more common when your baby starts to get a little bit older. Yeah, like into toddlerhood, or when you have your next pregnancy. For me and for a lot of people, it started during pregnancy, towards the end of pregnancy, while I was nursing my older toddler, which makes a lot of sense. You know, you're pregnant, your body's going through all kinds of craziness. And it set in then, and then it never went away. And I know for people, some people, it does go away. That feeling doesn't last the whole time. But I forgot the question, but I think I answered it.
So when you were nursing, when you were tandem nursing, you only had it when Jack was nursing, right? When Exley was newborn, yes. It wasn't happening.
Yeah, and I was breastfeeding them at the same time. But like when I was in a chair nursing Exley, there was no problem. And then when Jack would come over and nurse, it was awful. So, you know, it's just, you know, it's we have a whole episode on this nursing aversion, where especially
we do.
Episode, we do have several, but we have one where we talked to Melissa Morans, who's the researcher in Australia who did a whole study on it. And that was really interesting because people really do share a lot of the same symptoms, like the feeling of like bugs crawling on your skin and so severe spike in anxiety as soon as your baby latches on, and just the overwhelming desire to push your baby off of your breast. But again, I forgot the question. I'm sorry, I'm barely here. I swear I'm here, but I'm barely here. What was the question?
I just asked if it can happen with newborns.
Oh yeah. Well, because I just think it's not as common. It definitely happens. Because I remember hearing that it had happened to people with newborns. But it's, you know, it's these hormone things that are like just so unpredictable. And so you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes they just make things so dramatic and unexplainable. And I was just talking to my friend about this, and I was talking about like menopause symptoms. And you know, just like how, like, you know, as you're, you know, getting older, you know, your period kind of, your cycle changes, and you could start to bleed pretty heavy and at times, and you know, and they were like why it doesn't make any sense. Like if your body is starting to end the, you know, the production of eggs or whatever, wouldn't it just slowly go away and then just be gone? But it's hormonal. So it's just like she said, my friend compared it to like the drunk uncle who can't just leave. They have to make like a big dramatic, just make a big scene. We got to make a big scene before we leave.
Yeah.
So your hormones are just always making a big scene.
And that's what D-MER is. It's a hormonal thing.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, there's a lot of things it's not. And it's not nursing aversion. It is not classified as a postpartum mood disorder. It is not postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety.
Right.
It's not it's not a psychological issue. It's physiological, which means it's in the body. It's not psychological. You might have postpartum mood disorders or postpartum anxiety or something like that in conjunction with D-MER, but it is not alone. It's not a postpartum mood disorder. It's like I said, it's not psychological. It's physiological. It's not that you hate breastfeeding. It's not that you don't like your baby. It's not that you don't want to be with your baby. It's not any of those things. It's just a hormonal response that is happening in your body. And it can be really just difficult because then you're like, what do you do? Right? Like how do you get rid of this feeling?
Well, I know, and
nobody
it's
wants to feel terrible while they're breastfeeding.
Exactly. And this is exactly why this conversation really doesn't progress past this point, because past this point, anybody is going to say, well, why don't you just wean? That sounds terrible. It sounds like breastfeeding's not going well for you. And this goes for nursing aversion too, if anybody's like experiencing that. People will just be like, this isn't going well. You obviously aren't enjoying it. Like, why don't you just wean? And it's like people, I don't know, people just don't seem to understand. It's like, we don't want to.
Right.
This is what's happening and it's not comfortable. And I would like to find a solution so that I could keep breastfeeding my baby because that is my goal.
Exactly.
But that's very rarely what you hear in response.
I think it's really helpful to know that, like, let's take Ruby, for example, like she was having these feelings and stuff. And I think it's really helpful to know this could be related to something, it could be related to the actual thing, an actual something that happens within the body. It's not you just having these crazy feelings when you're trying to nurse your baby.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not that you just don't like your baby or don't like breastfeeding. These are like, if anything else happened, and I wish I could think of a really good example, but, people are just like, oh, here's a solution. Here's how you can deal with it. I'm a runner. I hurt my foot. And so now I can't run. If you go to the doctor and say that, they're not going to be like, oh, well, you should just stop running.
Right.
They're going to be like, oh, we should treat your foot so that you can run because you're a runner. So let's treat your foot to get you running again.
Exactly.
But when we have anything that's related to breastfeeding, it's just like, well, why are you doing it anyway? Just stop.
Right.
And we can take a break. We should take
let's take a break. And then we'll talk about some things that you can do.
Oh, perfect. Today's episode is brought to you by Sarah's Chill, a company that never stops making the lives of breastfeeding parents easier. Clunky coolers, bulky bags, batteries, and cords are so yesterday. Created by a mom for moms, Sarah's Chill guarantees convenience with their double-walled stainless steel breast milk chillers. A handful of ice is all you need to keep your breast milk or formula safe for 20 hours. No more lugging around bags full of plastic and chemical freeze packs. Now you can pump and double pump all day into one sleek container. The chillers are made with all the best materials, food grade stainless steel, platinum, silicone, and absolutely no lead components. Because moms deserve the best. Sarah's Chill is there for you no matter where your journey takes you. Breast milk storage, formula storage, cow's milk for toddlers, and more. Their products are not only beautiful, they are travel friendly and FSA, HSA reimbursable. This is truly breast milk storage reimagined. Head over to sarahschill.com. That's CERESCHILL.com. You can also check them out on Instagram at the same name, but it's sarahschill.com. Use code BADASS for 15% off of your order. People love these breast milk chillers, and they're good for use after your baby is weaned and is not using any. When your baby doesn't need it anymore, you can use it. So yes, back to DMER. What can we do?
So there are different intensities of DMER.
Oh, I forgot to say about I forgot my normal ending. Oh my God, what's wrong with me?
I know Abby's brain isn't here today.
My brain is not here. I also haven't been getting very much sleep because we rearranged our sleeping situation again.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, today's sponsors and all the promo codes and stuff can be found in the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from. You can also head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com where you'll find all of our other episodes and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne. There
we go. There, we got it in. my gosh. So as I was saying, there's different intensities to DMER. There is mild, moderate, and severe. And it's really up to the parent, the breastfeeding parent, to know like how she's feeling. You know, if the mother feels like this is like super intense for me, this is severe, I can't take it, like then it's severe for her. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Right. There's not like a blood test where like you get your level and then somebody tells you your seriousness. This is like your personal experience and you decide.
And it's a spectrum, right? That's kind of how they think about it. They think about it as it's on a spectrum. It's kind of how they describe it as being. So a lot of it depends on like how long it takes to self-correct, how many letdowns per feeding she feels the dysphoria, because you have several letdowns per feeding. So do you feel it every single time? Is it just with the first one? Mild often will self-correct within the first 3 months, moderate by 9 months, and severe sometimes does not correct until after the first year. So it can be really, if you're somebody that's experiencing it and it seems like it's pretty intense for you, it might stick around a little bit longer than you want it to. So there's lots of different things that you can do to help with this. Things that can help you, like being educated about it can be really helpful. Like knowing what it is, knowing that it can, happen, knowing that this is what it is that's bothering you. It's not, knowing that it's not your baby, knowing that it's not psychological. Education around it can be really helpful. Some other things that you can do, deep breathing. Well, a lot of it is kind of the same as nursing aversion, right? Because don't they say with nursing aversion, like lots of deep breathing, distracting yourself can be really helpful.
Distraction was the only thing that worked for me. And actually it didn't really work very well, but I would just do it. Honestly, I would like pinch the back of my hand or bite my lip a little, or go into like my neighborhood Facebook groups or something. And like, if you don't have a neighborhood Facebook group, you should join one because they're really funny. And people argue about the dumbest thing. And like that can keep you distracted to hear people arguing about. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
To argue about literally anything. And it is so fun. It's so fun to
the
read.
Drama. Yeah. It's the drama.
Yes.
But like they say, like watching TV, going on your phone, which we always say, oh, look at your baby while you're nursing. Don't worry about other things. But during something like this, it can be really helpful to distract yourself.
Yes.
Vitamin D, magnesium, those are things that have been known to help. Vitamin B complex has been known to help. Focusing on your breastfeeding goals, just kind of keeping that in mind, knowing that like this is what you're doing, this is what you want to do. You want to be able to breastfeed your baby. Says that drinking cold water with letdown can also help, which I find kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know why that is, and it doesn't say why it is, but it can really, says it can help. I would think the distraction would be the best thing. Magnesium helps with everything, but I feel like that's like a fix-all for everything. People are like, just take magnesium. It's like, okay. I don't know. But is there anything that can make it worse? Things that can make it worse is lack of self-care. So if you're not like taking care of yourself, if you're kind of letting your sleep go, if you're letting if you're dehydrated, if you're, not eating well, all of those things. Isolation can just make us feel like depressed anyway. So isolation is going to kind of make that worse. If you're feeling kind of low and then you have DMER on top of it, like I said, DMER is not psychological, but if you are feeling low and then you've got those feelings on top of it with the dysphoria, it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
So trying to kind of, get past that is really important. It says some other things that can make it worse. Low carb diets, somebody's touching you during that letdown time. You might find that to be very irritating.
Yes, that makes everything worse. Someone touching you while it's happening is worse. That as always just makes it worse.
Negative environment, caffeine, stress, too long a time between feedings. That can, which I totally get that, because that could cause, hormonal fluctuations too. Menstrual cycles changes, which is again hormonal, some changes in your hormones that can cause a messy and cluttered, and that can cause it too. So trying to kind of keep on top of like taking care of yourself and knowing that there are certain things that can impact it can be really helpful.
Yeah.
So if you're having these feelings, if you think that this is what it is and you're having feelings about it, you're feeling that dysphoria, that doomsday. I love how Ruby said that, like a doomsday feeling when you're just with the letdown, not throughout the entire course of your breastfeeding, then that could be just a D-MER situation. And try to do some of these things. Try to incorporate some distraction. Try to incorporate, drinking some water during letdown. These are easy things to do. Try to do some of that deep breathing and meditation while you are breastfeeding and during the letdown.
I have a question. So when you were experiencing it, did you know that you were experiencing it? Like were you like, oh God, this is so weird, I suddenly feel like really down? Or do you just kind of go into the feeling and just be like, and just suddenly you're like, oh my God, everything sucks. Life,
yeah, that's pretty much
terrible.
how I was. Like, this is, I don't like this. This is terrible.
So you didn't really know it was happening.
Mm-mm.
So
I had no idea what it was.
I wonder if that's helpful to know, because I know with nursing aversion, it's not helpful to be like, oh, I'm experiencing nursing aversion. And you try to be kind of intellectual and like kind of separate, trying to, like name it. And, it didn't help. It doesn't make it less of that icky feeling. Like the only thing that helps is really like, but like you can know like, okay, this is what's happening. The nursing aversion, this is what this is. This is I hate it, whatever. But and then does it give it any less power, or is it just like, I wonder if people, once they learn about it and they're like, okay, this is what's happening, if they can through that course of that letdown be like, okay, I know what's happening. I know what's going on. I know that I'm experiencing that D-MER and that it's going to pass in a minute.
Well, according to what they know about it, that's supposed to be helpful.
Okay.
Like it's supposed to be helpful to know and to have that education behind it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that always helps.
That is different. Yeah, that is different from nursing aversion.
I wonder if it gives it the feelings less power, because I just feel like that's what, like a nursing aversion, it doesn't really make you feel less icky. You just know why you're feeling icky.
Yeah.
Which I guess helps overall. Like, okay, it doesn't mean that, so there's not something wrong with me. There's not, we're not having this unique experience that just means that I'm doing it wrong and it's not working out for me. Once you learn about it, you know that this is something that happens to some people and that it can pass, and that you can, if you want to continue nursing, there's ways that you can try to work through it.
Yeah. It's really hard. It's really hard, because I think a lot of times is you don't realize if it's something that you've never heard of before.
Yeah.
You don't know that you're not even like, because I wasn't even like, I just thought it was part of my breastfeeding experience.
Right.
That you feel like that. I didn't know that it was something else until years later when I started learning more about breastfeeding. But
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
For people that are listening, if you're having these feelings, like this very well could be what it is. And now like, okay, this is kind of how this is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dopamine response. It's your dopamine dropping too fast. And it's, it's just something that's hormonal and physiological, and you can get past it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so like mysterious, I feel like, like it just feels such a mysterious thing, and people don't really talk about it. They said it's rare. Like, it's one of the things that I've read was that like, oh, it's rare, but I really wonder how rare it is, because I don't know that people really talk about it that much. I don't know that people end up really saying to somebody, you know what, when my milk lets down, I feel pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think that happens.
Right. Well, and because we talked about how people didn't necessarily always associate it with their letdown. Because if they don't know, if they don't feel it, if they don't really know, I mean, you can breastfeed and not know anything about breastfeeding. Sometimes it just works out. Something hit my window. I don't know. You can breastfeed and not know anything. Like, if things happen to go well for you, you can just put your baby to your breast, and you can, I feel like people, like, throughout, animals breastfeed, they don't know. They're not like, oh, I'm having a letdown right now, I can feel it. Like, they're just doing it. And, that happens to humans sometimes. I know that happens. I have a friend who just breastfeeding just went really well for her. She doesn't really know much about breastfeeding. She just put her baby to her breast, and like, things just kind of never really had an issue, which I think is rare. But yeah, if you don't even know what a letdown is, then you're not really going to associate that with anything.
Exactly. So if you are having those negative feelings at the beginning of your breastfeeding journey, like in the beginning of your breastfeeding session, early in your breastfeeding journey, then it could very well be D-MER. It doesn't last throughout the feeding, and it should hopefully resolve itself within a few months. If that's true, like truly what you're feeling. And things like nausea, like Ruby mentioned nausea. Nausea's like, that's more of like an oxytocin response, I think. So that is something different that she's feeling on top of the D-MER. Like, it's not related. I don't believe like nausea is related to D-MER. That's something that's different. It's more of an oxytocin thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? It's a totally different, that's a totally different thing.
Our bodies are so complicated. We have, and this all, of course, can tie into how we know very little about women's health, because there's not a lot of resources get put into trying to understand it. And if you, like the solutions to things, especially when it comes to hormones, doctors often will be like, well, we can, give you some birth control. Like, that's the thing. If you have like heavy periods, if you have anything like, things that have to do with your cycle, or things that are unique to the woman's body as far as reproduction system, whatever, doctors are like, oh, well, we can put you on birth control and see how that helps. We'll just like give you more hormones and see how that interacts, and maybe it'll help.
One of the things I read was that birth control can make it worse, can make this worse.
Yeah, I would imagine that anything hormone related, birth control can either make it better or make it worse. Because it's just, when it comes to hormones, we don't know, like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no.
Because the hormones could do, a hormone fluctuation could do something one thing to you and do the total opposite to me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had two friends who got pregnant at the same time. And one friend, before she got pregnant, had a real bad acne problem. And the other friend had, very clear skin. And when they got pregnant around the same time. It completely flipped. The person who had acne, it all cleared up. And then the person who had clear skin got acne.
Oh my God.
It's just like, okay, great. That means
the
that
hormones
makes
are just
whatever.
Yeah. Yep. The hormones are crazy. There's just a lot. And like you said, nobody really understands women's health that much.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling it, it should only last like 30 seconds to 2 minutes. If this sounds like something that's going on with you, then this is probably what it is. And, you can shoot us an email. We'd love to hear your story about it. It can really impact your breastfeeding journey, especially if you're not sure what it is and what's going on. So hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully just knowing that it's something that should phase out during your breastfeeding, then, I hope it was helpful. But that's it.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.